Real esoteric spirituality without all of the fluff, without all of the nonsense. This is the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. Click subscribe and then hit the little bell button so that you can be notified whenever I've uploaded a video or when I'm doing the live Q&A videos. Hello, Thunder Wizards. So, today we're going to be talking about shamanic self-healing. I stopped because I could see myself here and I look like Mr. Clean. Anyway, if you don't know who Mr. Clean is, then you're too young to understand what I'm talking about. All right, so shamanic self-healing. So, we're going to be talking about the theory about how we heal ourselves. I'm using the word shamanic because that's the best word to describe this philosophy. So let's talk about the word shamanism for a moment. I want to be clear again. This word shamanism, by the way, is a made-up word. It doesn't exist. The word comes from the Siberian word shaman, which is in the Tengarist religion means priest. The Tengarist religion is what is known as animist. Animism is the belief that everything in the universe has consciousness. An animist priest or priestess or practitioner is somebody who acts as a gateway between the physical and the non-physical worlds. They travel outside of the body to, in what we call shamanic visions, in order to talk to other beings, in order to communicate, in order to bring balance, in order to, all that kind of stuff. So when I use the word shamanic, I'm talking about the interaction of forces on that level. There's a difference between the shamanic or the animist mindset and the religious mindset. The religious mindset may do some of those same things, have visions, travel out of the body, communicate with spirits. But the religious mindset, and I mean religious in the sense of the Abrahamic religions, is that you are controlled by this super powerful super being we call God, who controls everything and who nothing is done without this being controlling everything. The animist belief system is the belief system that all peoples at some point in time had in their religious system. And we look to primitive peoples because they still practice this animist mindset. The reason why the word shamanism refers to animist religions is because back in the 1700s, some Christian missionaries went to what is now Siberia, and they saw the Tengarists practicing their animist religion, and they called them shamans. And so whenever Westerners, whenever they went into some primitive place, they saw somebody practicing animism, they would call it shamanism. And I'm making this distinction so you understand the assumption. Shamanism, the way I use the term, is a way of understanding how the world works. Now, modern times, since we're going to be talking about healing, there's a lot of people who claim to be shamans, who claim to practice shamanism, shamanic healing, and they have a specific meaning about it. And the specific meaning is that they use hallucinogens, entheogens, power plants, I don't care what word you want to use. They use an outside chemical influence that, and all animists believe that plants have their own personality and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not taking that part out of it, but it is an external influence upon you, specifically on the glandular level to release DMT and all kinds of other things. And that is what, in fact, I've run into people who say they're shamans. And then I say, oh, so am I. And then I'll ask them questions like, what sect of shamanism, or where did you learn it, or what, and they look at me kind of funny, like they don't know what I'm talking about. And then I find out that their version of shamanism means that they take power plants and trip out. And I remember meeting one guy who said he was a shamanic teacher. And I kept on asking him what he did. And it turns out that what he does is he just, is a guide for somebody as they're tripping out on power plants. So that is not shamanism in my book. It doesn't mean that it can't be, because in traditional settings, people use those extreme tools in order to solve a problem, like healing. And there's a lot of people who want to use ayahuasca for healing. Now, before I give you my opinion on that, if you do enough research in traditional ayahuasca healers, you will find out that ayahuasca doesn't heal. Ayahuasca is an advisor. It's not a healer. And I remember following some woman on YouTube because I really wanted to hear the experience of somebody who was using ayahuasca, a Westerner, using ayahuasca to heal. And this was a woman who had, I believe it was Lyme disease. And it was, it was bad enough that she really sought out some healing. And she went to South America and she did some ayahuasca. And then later on, now I haven't looked her up recently, but, when I looked her up, she was advertising herself as a shamanic counselor. But here's the thing. She took something like 30 trips on ayahuasca, and she never got healed from her Lyme disease. Another person I saw talking about ayahuasca, and I appreciate the honesty, came on and said, ayahuasca will not heal your disease. So why do people seek this out? We can get into that. That's a whole other subject. So I just want to distinguish what I'm talking about. When I use the word shamanic healing, shamanic self-healing, I'm talking about approaching physical healing from the perspective that your world, your external environment, is your own projection. That what you experience on the external level is a reflection, a projection of your own internal experience. If you have illness in your body, it is a reflection of a conflict that is happening on the internal level. And so I would say, from my perspective, based on my assumption, that all healing, no matter how it is derived, whether it's through medicine, whether it's through energy healing, whether it's through psychic healing, whether it's through power plants, meditation, psychology, religious faith healing, we'll talk about that, that all healing is self-directed. And all of these things, whether it's taking antibiotics or whether it's having, a healer do some mojo on you and heal you, those are all the tools that you have used to project into your outer reality to achieve your own healing. It is always your own healing. You are the one that does it. So, let's talk about now the difference between religious faith healing and shamanic self-healing. Before we get into the differences, let's talk about how they line up. So I am of the firm belief that born again, crazy, lunatic Christians, wiping the ceiling as they sing God's praises and praying in tongues and all that. There are spontaneous healings. There are faith healings. I don't dispute any of that. I'm sure there are a lot of false healings as well, but I would not dispute it if somebody said Jesus healed me. I went to some faith healer and he put his hand on my forehead and I fell back down and I went into convulsions, and when I woke up I could see or the pain was gone. I would completely believe that. Because, as I said, no matter what it is that is the catalyst for the healing is your own projection. You have given yourself permission to heal. Now, I would also be willing to bet that if I looked into these people and I asked them a lot of questions, I would find out that simultaneously with this healing, they also forgave themselves, and because their experience is that Jesus has forgiven them of their sins. But what that is that's another way of saying that they have forgiven themselves. Listen up. You've been lied to about the nature of the matrix. What if I told you that you could hack into the matrix? I've done it, and I can teach you how to do it. Click below to watch the free video that I put on my YouTube channel a few years ago that has since gone viral. I discovered that the matrix, like everything else in the universe, operates from certain rules. There are 5 rules that govern the matrix. And then there is one secret technique that, to my knowledge, nobody else has figured out, that allows you to hack into the matrix, understanding these 5 rules and using these 5 rules to control, manipulate, and change reality so that you can have exactly what you want out of life. Don't allow yourself to be deceived by the victim mentality that has been thrust upon you by everybody in the media and in modern society, in history, in religion. You have the power to hack into the matrix, to control your life, and have the life of your dreams. Click below, watch the free video, and then learn how you can do what I've been doing for myself over the past few years. Now, I learned this concept very strongly when I was a born-again Christian, back when I was much younger. And I was one of those guys that went out and preached on the street, and I did all kinds of things. And I was also an exorcist. I didn't seek that out, but I didn't consciously seek it out, but I became an exorcist. And I mean, I'd be like walking down the street and somebody would come up to me and say, "There's somebody inside of me, I know you can help." I remember being in church. I was in Australia, as a matter of fact, and with a church group. And we were in a church, and there was like some guy in the foyer of the church, and he was just, having some kind of fit on the floor, and everybody was cowering inside the church. And I asked, "What's going on?" And somebody told me this guy gave his life to the devil in a seance the other night. And so I said, "Well, what are we standing here for?" And I went over and I said, "Somebody help me." I was holding the guy down. And I was saying, "In Jesus' name, Satan, I command you." And they're all like peering out. And I'm like, these are Christians. These are people who have read the Bible and the New Testament talking about Jesus casting out demons, and they didn't know what to do. So I said, "Get over here. I need some help." And so a couple people came and held him down, and I started, "In Jesus' name, blah, blah, blah." And all the stuff that you see in The Exorcist, I experienced, except for the turning of the head. Except for the head turning around on the body, everything else I experienced. The projectile vomiting, the people transforming and changing, and I shouldn't say everything, but a lot of the same things. So I know that there's a real spiritual world out there. Anyway, this isn't about exorcism, but what I learned was that whenever I did an exorcism, and I would be able to, when the demon is in the person's face, I had the ability with the name of Jesus to get the demon to go away. The person would come back and they'd be like freaked out and scared, and I would say, and I learned very quickly how to get to the problem and fix it. And I would say, "Who are you angry at? Who harmed you?" And sure enough, every time there would be somebody who had either physically, sexually, or psychologically abused them. And I would say, "You have to forgive them." And if they refused, they said, "No, I'm not going to." And the demon would come back, and I would say, "Listen, the demon's not going to leave until you forgive whoever harmed you." And I would have to get them to say the name of the person that harmed them and have them say, "I forgive you." Then I was able to cast the demon out. And so that taught me a lot, and I did that for a while, and I stopped doing it because it was very toxic for me, and on a spiritual, energetic level, it was very damaging. You know, I'd do the exorcism and then I'd go home, and at night I'd be falling asleep, and then I'd be able to see in my mind what was energetically going on. And it was just so awful and toxic. And I said, you know, the bottom line is these people need counseling. They need to go to a therapist. That's really what they need, because I would say to them, until you, and then afterwards, you know, we'd get rid of the demon and blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, you need to go, and I would say, you know, go to your pastor or do this. Or basically what I was saying now, I would say, listen, you have to do some work to clean out your unconscious issues. You have to heal yourself from your unconscious traumas. Otherwise, it's going to come back. And I would say that to him. It's going to come back. That same demon will come back if you don't change what's happening to you internally. And sure enough, 3 months later, 6 months later, they'd be possessed again. And it's because they weren't able or willing to go through the trauma of healing the wound that happened to them. It's too traumatic. And the demon served as an external force that, although it was horrible, on the one hand, they're experiencing on an external level all of the horrible abuse that they went through. But it's also a way to distract them from the pain of how sad it is that somebody that you loved and trusted harmed you. That's really, that is worse than whatever the demon did to them. So I learned that healing is self-generated, and that harm is self-generated. Now, that was a long time ago, and I've had a long time to, you know, look at things and experience things and all of that. So I consider myself a shamanic healer, but I'm not somebody that puts hands on people and puts my energy into them and heals them. I give them tools to heal themselves, and I work as a shamanic counselor. I counsel people and talk to them and help them, you know, work through that. Because that's what I found out, is that ultimately everything is our own creation. So I'm going to share a couple of questions that came to me about this subject, and I want to address it because, you know, in order to have a conversation, you have to share an assumption. If you don't share a common assumption, you're just talking at each other and nothing happens. And that's when people fight and they get into flame wars. And you're going to see, there's a guy here who tries to goad me into a flame war with him. And the problem is that he's not sharing the same assumption. I think unconsciously he knows what my assumption is, and he's trying to divert me from it so that he can, you know. By the way, you know, whenever somebody wants to play devil's advocate with me, this happens a lot. And devil's advocate are people who are not my regular students. They don't work with me personally. They probably haven't read my books or practiced any of the, you know, the practices I give. They may, on some level, have dabbled in that. But usually they're just people that come on and want to watch the videos, and that's as far as it goes. But whenever somebody wants to become a devil's advocate, meaning they want to keep coming back and sort of pick little fights with me about minutia, what's really happening here is that they know that something I'm saying will be transformative for them. Hi, I'm Michael Denny of SpiritTao.com, and this is Celestial Negung Part 1. Celestial Negung means that this is power that is descending from heaven. And the idea is that we are all microcosms of the entire universe. You are the entire universe, and everything around you is simply the projection. You are looking within yourself. So when you look up into the stars at night, you're actually looking deep within your own body. When you look at the sun, the moon, the trees, the flowers, you're looking within yourself. This is Negom. And so what we're doing is we're simply releasing that infinity from within us. You are tapping into and releasing the power that is within our own body, our own cells, our own organs. So one of the reasons that I'm making this DVD is in the hope that the essence and the spirit of the teaching of the Shang-Ching arts can be taught to the world at large, and it is my hope that the core essence of what the Shang-Ching tradition is will continue to live and grow and evolve. As we move on into the Aquarian age, everything is changing. I don't need to tell you that. The entire world is changing, and what we are seeing now is that if people hold on to external things, they are very challenged in life. And those who are making the transition into the next phase that we are moving into in the world as we approach 2012, those who look within and find their source of strength from within, those are the people who are getting the most out of life and will make the transition into the next phase of evolution most comfortably. It is my belief that the Shang-Ching tradition is one method whereby human beings can evolve into the next level of being in the most comfortable fashion and be able to take advantage of the rapid, energetic, mental, and spiritual changes that are going on in the world today. And instead of just saying, you know, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm going to move on. Instead of saying that, they're resisting what the full impact of what I'm teaching. And so they're playing devil's advocate. The other thing is that they're also frustrated teachers. And instead of owning to themselves that they want to be a teacher and a healer and have their own channel and do whatever, instead they want to fight with me, and get into little squabbles with me. So one of these guys sort of does that. The other one is, I believe, it has an honest question. So we're going to take a look at that. The first one is, I'm going to take a look at this one first. This is somebody who looks like they're new to the channel. And bear in mind, if you leave a comment publicly, I'm assuming you want to have a public conversation, a public discussion. And if I think it's worthy of discussion, I may bring it into a video like this. Normally we do it in live Q&A videos, which will be up again in, a little less, in about a month. So this person says, I'll try and get to all of it. This was the video I did about marijuana, about cannabis, and I won't get into that. So this person is seeking healing and says, my question is now, what words could you offer someone like me to start this journey of self-healing? Not necessarily specific, okay. And it says, for example, I'm going to South America. Well, first the person says, not necessarily specifically in the context of the way you chose and choose. In general, for example, I'm going to South America trying to find healers as masters to work with. Nothing is more important to me than healing. And so I might become able myself to heal and help in the manner that is needed. In case you answer my question, I would really be thankful if you read this text. The journey is the only way, blah, blah, blah. So first thing is, there's one thing in your question that's not serving you, which is, you ask my advice. What kind of advice would I give to somebody starting this journey of self-healing? And then you say, but not necessarily your way. I'm going to go and train in South America, which I assume what that means is that you're going to go learn ayahuasca. I'm assuming that's what you mean. And then you say, but not necessarily your way. Well, I only know my way. I only have my experience. So, if you want to learn how, what somebody should do who's starting out to go learn from a healer in South America, you should talk to a healer from South America or a Westerner who's done that. I haven't done that. So I can't talk about something, tailor-made for you. But generally speaking, what I would say is that self-healing is exactly that. It's self-healing. And any mode, I want to look for the most superior and direct mode of healing. In my experience, tools like ayahuasca, even tools like energy healing, are tools that are ultimately used as an excuse for the unconscious mind to heal itself. So I would say go straight to the source. Now, some people can't do that. Very powerful tools like ayahuasca and plants are there to serve one purpose. They are extreme tools. They're like antibiotics. You don't want to take antibiotics every day as vitamins. It'll kill you. Same thing with ayahuasca. There are people that are permanently insane from doing ayahuasca. It's a poison. And you're putting your body, you're forcing your body to have a near-death experience. You're crapping your pants and you're puking your guts out. This is the body saying, I'm being poisoned. I'm not saying it doesn't have its place, but that's what it is. To worship that as this is the way. Medicine is poison. Snake venom is medicine. It can heal people, but it's poison. So my first thing is, that is an extreme tool that is used to crack open the aura when somebody needs to get to their unconscious. It's done in a traditional setting. Traditionally speaking, you have a shaman who sometimes spends weeks doing singing and dancing and offerings and rituals to protect you. And a real South American shaman, a real South American ayahuasca shaman, will read your energy and more often than not will say, no, you are not going to participate in the ceremony. You're not ready. That's a real healer. Somebody who takes your money and every time gives you the ayahuasca, I'm going to say they're not a real healer. Because it's not like that. It was never meant to be that. The Vedics, the East Indians, and the Taoists both used to use power plants in ancient times, and they both stopped doing that. They stopped doing it, number one, because they saw it was less effective and unnecessary, and once they mastered energy work to open the channels with their own connection to life force energy through their own bodies, they found it to be superior and there's no negative side effects. It only makes you healthier. So they stopped using that a long time ago. The Soma, there was a Soma ritual where the Vedic priests used ephedra and cannabis and a bunch of other things, and then they would go into trance, and then that's where the Vedas came from. Indra spoke through them, right? But that, we don't need to do that anymore. So I would say to you, instead of, I'm going to say, I don't know what your orlog is, your destiny is. If you want to go to South America and do that, go do that. I'm going to say that there are more powerful, more effective ways to learn how to heal yourself with what the Westerners would call heal yourself with your own mind. And that's much better, to make the decision, I'm going to heal myself, and then you don't have to do that. You don't have to escape yourself in order to heal yourself. So I ultimately think it's not the most direct and the most effective way, but it may be necessary for some very unconscious people. Somebody who is extremely unconscious really needs to be cracked open and experience, in order to trust the universe, then that's the way some people need to go. So I'm not going to say that there isn't any value in it. I'm just going to say, you're asking me, this is my experience. I say there are other ways to do it, and I think better, more effective. It's a little longer. It may take longer to do it the way that I recommend, but once you get to a certain level of proficiency, it happens much more quickly. In my case, I suffered from, and I was a master teacher. I was a master energy practitioner and teacher and shaman and all that kind of stuff. And I was suffering from debilitating back spasms, neck pain, joint pain. I had sciatica. I had tendonitis so bad that I wouldn't have been able to have lifted this bottle. It would have been too painful. And I was prepared to accept that that was going to happen to me for the rest of my life. And that was just, what happens when you get older. Until I fully understood and started taking actions to create from within my perfect exterior. I worked on resolving the conflict internally. And when I resolved my internal conflict and took action to reflect that, my external world changed and my physical body healed itself completely. I don't have any of those issues anymore. I have zero issues on a physical level. So let me just make sure that I look. I've also got some notes here I should be looking at. So to sort of answer your question, I would recommend what I think is the superior method, which involves working with energy directly. So for that, I teach Celestial Qigong. You can go to celestialqigong.com for that. That will connect you directly. That will plug you directly into the power. You won't have to take a plant to get the power. Because here's the thing. Whenever you get power from a plant spirit, let's just use it as if you're getting power from the spirit of that plant, there is going to be a sacrifice that you will have to pay. And that sacrifice will be with your own energy. You can't do those kinds of things without having to recover. It takes a huge toll on the glands of the body. It takes a huge toll on your energy field. It ultimately might end up helping you to heal. But it is a huge, you've got to understand the power that you're playing with. That spirit will demand a sacrifice from you. And so you will have to pay that price. Now, when you work directly with the universe, when you work directly with the life force energy of the universe, the sacrifice is there, but it is different. With the power plant, you are going to have to sacrifice your own energy. You will have to give your life force away to that being in order to get its power. And it is temporary. The universe, on the other hand, doesn't want your life force energy. It wants to give you life force energy. What it wants in return for its energy is your false reality. You might call it your ego. You'll have to sacrifice your ego. Odin's sacrifice on the tree of life, which resulted in him having access to the runes, which is another word to say the mysteries, the secrets of existence. He died to himself. He sacrificed himself, small s, to himself, big S. He sacrificed his ego, his identity. You will have to go through a death of your own identity in order to have the unlimited power of the universe. On a physical level, however, there is no side effects. There are no negative side effects. It's only positive. In fact, your human body will heal and grow and become healthy. And one of the reasons I am as healthy as I am at 55 is that I spent decades in my 20s, my 20s and 30s, really, being celibate and practicing energy work and gaining a lot of energy and opening all my meridians. I don't work nearly as hard as I used to, but because of that, I'm benefiting from all the work I did before. So that's part of the sacrifice. So there's a sacrifice no matter which way you take. Now, the easy way is to take a power plant, because then you're not sacrificing your ego. You're forcing a massive energy influx in exchange for your energy, and it's passive, meaning you drink. And then that squeezes the third eye and the pineal and the pituitary and the DMT and all that. It forces the issue. So you get an immediate result, but then you've got this bill in the mail, which is your physical energy that you're going to have to pay. And again, there's no guarantee you're going to get any healing from that. The only thing you're guaranteed is that your aura will be cracked open. If you are destined for it and you have a powerful enough shaman guiding you, then you may have an experience with an entity or a spirit or even the spirit of that plant, which will teach you. It will give you something that is going to do the same thing. It's going to transform your unconscious identity of yourself. But there's no guarantees. This is the thing. There's no guarantees. The only guarantee is that you will have put yourself through a huge energetic experience, and that it's going to cost you. And that you'll have an experience. But again, if you don't have the protection, if you don't have the right protection of the right healer, then you don't know if you're not just swimming in your own unconscious narcissism. This is what bad trips are. Like when people take acid and they have a bad trip, they are having a nightmare. It's their own unresolved fears and horrors that they're deep in their, that they're not aware of in their unconscious mind coming up, and that's why people, have good trips and people have bad trips. It's just you are now become conscious of what's in your unconscious mind, but it doesn't result in consciousness every time. That's why some people took acid and became conscious, and some people went crazy and jumped off of buildings. So for me, the best way is to use energy, direct energy, celestialqigong.com. To answer your question, and I would recommend getting involved in a serious spiritual practice that has to do with meditation and shamanic ritual. And that is like, you want to become Mr. Olympia, you got to go to the gym and you got to lift weights, 3 times a day or 3 times a week in different body parts, and you got to eat, you got to do all that. And then your body will change over time. You want to change your unconscious mind, you're going to have to you're going to have to get into a lifestyle of ritual, energy work, mantra, deity worship. All of these things are tools that will go in and change your unconscious mind, which is another way of saying they will go in and change your internal environment. When your internal environment has changed, your external environment will reflect that. And that's how you heal yourself. You change the internal environment, external environment. I've shared this story before. I'll share it again. The Huna healer, I don't remember his name. Some of you, I'm sure, do. I believe he's a Japanese guy, lives in Hawaii, and he was a psychologist who then trained with a Hawaiian Huna master, which is the shamanism of Hawaii. And he apparently had some amazing abilities to help heal people. And there was an insane asylum, I believe it was in San Francisco, that called on him and asked for his help and said, "We've heard great things about you. We have some patients here who are really far gone. They're totally insane. They're very violent, and we have to chain them up. And it's like we have to treat them like animals, and we have them chained up because they're constantly biting people and attacking people and throwing their feces everywhere and all that kind of stuff. And, can you help us?" And he says, "Yes, I can help you." And they said, "Oh, great. When can you be here?" Because he was in Hawaii. He said, "Oh, I'm not coming there. I just want their files." She says, "Well, how are you going to help them if you're not going to see them?" He says, "Don't worry about that. Just send me their files. This is how I do it." So she says, "Okay." And she sent him the files. And then, I don't know how long it took, but the people, these problem patients, started changing. They started healing. They started becoming sane again. So much so that, if I understand it correctly, some were released back on their own recognizance. They were earlier chained to the wall because they were so insane and so violent. So when he was asked how he did that, he said, "I didn't heal them, I healed myself." Okay, so be honest with me. You have tried practicing the law of attraction in your life. You have sat on the edge of your bed and you have focused on positive feelings and focused on bringing up good feelings about things that you want in your life, and you've had little or no results. If you're honest, in my experience, the majority of people who have really tried to use the law of attraction to manifest their dreams have been disappointed, and in some cases outright frustrated, and in some cases their lives got worse. Now there is an actual reason for that, and that is because the law of attraction actually doesn't work unless it is combined with the law of manifestation. And sadly, most of the law of attraction teachers out there, many of them well-intentioned, are only giving half of the recipe for being successful when it comes to intending and manifesting your life. My name is Michael William Denny of the ThunderWizard.com YouTube channel, and just like you years ago, I tried sitting on the edge of my bed and focusing on positive feelings. I tried to keep myself in a positive state of mind, and very little happened, and as a result it was very hard for me to keep those positive feelings coming. And then I was told that, well, you have negative things in your life because you're focusing on too many negative things. But the problem was I couldn't turn my negative feelings off. But here's something that I've learned, and this is incredibly important. I want you to listen to this. You don't have to monitor your feelings. You can have all kinds of negative feelings. You can have sadness, you can have fear, you can have resentment, all of these so-called negative feelings that are supposed to bring you all kinds of negative things. You can have these feelings, and if you know how to practice the law of manifestation, it doesn't matter how you feel. And that to me was so liberating. Because listen, there's a lot of people out there feeling guilty and feeling unspiritual because they do have less than perfect feelings. And when things aren't manifesting the way they want, guess what happens? Naturally, you have negative feelings coming up. And if you've been told that your negative feelings will bring negative things, then you are then filled in with this feeling of guilt and shame, and then you go into this cycle of guilt and shame, and you can never get out of it. And it doesn't matter how many seminars you go to, or how many books you read, or how many videos you watch of people telling you if you focus on positive things will happen. None of that matters, because now you're filled with all of these negative feelings, and then you're afraid to take any action, and then nothing happens in your life. So I'm here to free you from all of that. It doesn't matter how you feel. The only thing that matters is, do you know how to properly intend? And that is what the law of manifestation is. When you combine that, then guess what happens? You start to have some positive feelings come back into your life, and then guess what happens? Then you can merge the law of attraction, because you can take those positive feelings and you can merge it with the law of manifestation, and you can focus that energy into your intentions. And then, in my experience, the law of attraction and the law of manifestation works every time. It has worked for me. I'm sitting here in front of my house. I'm not kidding you. My house is right over there. And I simply walked out of the front door of my house this morning and decided to make a video and tell you my experience of the law of manifestation and the law of attraction. So, if you want to get started, click the link and go to ThunderWizard.com and look for the Manifestation Mastery course, and click on that to get started. What I did was I looked at the files, and I flipped through the files, and I'm using my own words here. I don't remember his exact words, so I'm using my words here. Flipped through the files, and whenever I saw something and had an emotional judgment, an emotional reaction, patient A throws his feces, patient C bites somebody's ear off. Whenever he had a judgment about, oh, what a horrible, disgusting person, what an insane person, what a messed up person, whatever the judgment was, he would stop. And he saw that as his own imperfection. Because the way he saw it is that all of these people, at their core essence, are divine and perfect. And his job is only to see them in their true state, which is not in the state that he's experiencing them. He's experiencing them as being these messed up human beings. And as long as he co-signs that experience, that what he calls faulty data remains in his lower self. I'm pointing to my navel. He means in his unconscious. I'm using my words now. He means that in his unconscious mind, he has made up these people to be screwed up and insane, and so therefore he's projecting that into reality, which means his external experience of them is that they're insane and they throw their feces at the wall and blah, blah, blah. If he can change his experience of that within him because they reflect something that is inside of him, and he wants to not judge himself, and his whole method of healing is to get to where he acknowledges and becomes conscious of his own self-judgment, which he sees in other people, to resolve that and see himself as being perfect, which means seeing them as being perfect. And when he can change his experience of them in his own unconscious, they will reflect that. And he says, there's just no way. Once I change that within me, they have to heal. And so, and he goes on to say, when people ask him, well, what about, stuff outside of us? And he says, no, there is nothing outside of you. Everything is inside of you. This is the shamanic assumption that I'm starting from. I don't care what you use. I don't care if you use medicine, ayahuasca, energy healing, faith healing. All that's happening is that you are changing your own experience of yourself on an unconscious level, and it's being reflected in your external environment, which in this case means your physical body. So that is what I believe healing to be. So now we'll get to the next question, which is another person who, as I said earlier, is somebody who likes to, I believe, somebody who likes to play devil's advocate with me, which is about all kinds of other things, which we won't get into. That's not the one I wanted. Hang on. I got to find it here. Here it is. All right, so he actually edited his reply. He took a reply. So his question here, and it's a good question, and I think it needs to be addressed. It should be looked at. So I'm not talking about illness or healing in this video. If I did, it was a side rant. But he says, when you are talking of illness, this brings up an issue I've always wanted to ask. This is a regular guy who comes onto my Q&As and asks me a lot of questions, and I do my thing, which is I expose what I believe to be his unconscious, unresolved issues. So he says, when you're talking of illness, this brings up an issue I've always wanted to ask. If illnesses are psychosomatic / rage / trauma in origin, doesn't this just restate the Christian teachings that illness / misfortune is God's punishment, but repackaged as our own selves punishing, etc.? What's the difference between this approach and the old, quote, if you just believe in Jesus enough, oh, didn't work? Well, you don't have enough faith, unquote, garbage. This is very abusive and damaging to the chronically ill. And then he says, so my quadriplegic friend just doesn't want to get up out of his chair bad enough? All right. Now, the first part of that question up until that last sentence was actually a good question. And what he really wants to fight with me on, he doesn't know this, but what he really wants to fight with me on is he doesn't want to give up his assumption about how the universe works. Because the Christian model states, the assumption of the Christian model is that God is in control and you are this little nothing and you have no control. And it's the same assumption that even non-religious or even atheists have, which is that, the universe is just this arbitrary thing that does whatever it does, and it's just a stroke of, chance, and you really have no choice over what happens. You get sick, you get blah. The same thing. They don't believe in a God up there controlling it, but they believe in just random fate. And both is the same. You're this tiny little being in this huge universe, and you're a victim of circumstance. So what my friend here doesn't realize is that the reason why he really has a problem with what I'm saying is because he wants to hold on to the Christian idea, which is why he says, isn't that just like the Christian idea? That's where he wants to go. He wants to be a victim of circumstance. Now, what's the benefit in being a victim of circumstance? The benefit of being a victim of circumstances, you don't have to take responsibility. And number two, you don't have to face and heal your own unconscious issues. Remember what I said about the people who I did exorcisms on. They ultimately were the ones that healed themselves, but in order to do it, they had to face the pain of the trauma of somebody harming them and forgiving. You can't forgive somebody, truly forgive somebody, without then going into the pain of how horrible, how sad it is that somebody I loved and trusted harmed me. But it's easier to get angry and be a victim, because then you don't have to really feel the deep pain. And then it's easier to just be beat up and tortured by some demon than it is to face the real pain of how sad it is that your mother or your father really horribly traumatized you and betrayed your trust in them. That's really what it's all about. Which is why, again, in order to heal yourself, you have to start with an assumption of trust. This is the same when it comes to money. I strongly recommend everybody go and watch the video series I have on the 5 rules to master the matrix. matrix.thunderwizard.com. Go there. You'll understand if you can adopt those assumptions, everything in your world will change, and you will be able to change everything. Now, his question is good because he's talking about, so God forgiving you for your sin assumes that you're a bad person and your illness is God hating you. Let's not talk about God's punishment. Your illness is God hating you. He's willing you to be, I mean, think about it. If you got an illness, and this is all through the Old Testament, boils and pestilence and all that, is because God is angry with you. You've angered him, and his anger has resulted in these diseases. That's just horrible. It's just this insane lunatic who's in heaven just wishing evil upon you, cursing you and wishing evil upon you and making you sick with his thoughts and intentions. Think about that. That's awful. That is a completely different assumption. I'm saying that illness that can be healed, there's some things that, if you're born with one arm, there's not a whole lot that, maybe there is, but, that's a karmic thing. And that's a whole other issue. And I'm not going to get into that, but it comes from the same thing. You've chosen to have a limited experience in order to learn something. That was your choice. We won't get into that. I'm not going to unpack that bag of worms today. But we're talking about diseases that can be healed. Cancer, fibromyalgia, neck pain, back pain, sciatica, all these kinds of things. These are things that can be healed, and a bunch more. There's a bunch more things that can be healed. I'm just giving a few examples. And what happens is that we live in a world where we are shamed for being our true selves. Shame is the big killer. If there is a demon or a devil in this universe, it is shame. What is shame? Self-hatred. So we're in a society where if you live for your own happiness, you are shamed as lazy, as silly, as non-productive, as blah, blah, blah. This is shame. Shame is self-hatred. So what happens is your soul, which is purely connected to life force energy, your soul wants to become infinite through doing what it is that brings you joy. You want to be a ballerina, you want to be a dancer, you want to be a surfer, you want to be a musician, you want to, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You can be a plumber. I don't care what it is. You have this joy in doing whatever it is that you want to do. You want to be a scientist, you want to go to the moon, I don't care. And as long as you stay connected to that and you have no conflict, meaning you're not conflicted about, should I be doing this? Is this the right thing to do? And the worst conflict is when you feel bad. I know I shouldn't want this. We have this about sex. To have strong sexual desires, people feel really guilty about that. They're not allowed to have sexual desires. You're evil, you're sinful, and so people end up with all kinds of craziness and physical diseases because of that. So we can see that. You have this infinite eternal energy that wants to express through your joy. You've been given some message somewhere that says that's wrong and you're evil for doing that. That becomes an intolerable thought. So you shove down into your unconscious, your unaware, the part of you that's unaware. Remember, we have three minds: your conscious, your subconscious, and your unconscious. So you shove all of your desires into your unconscious mind and tell yourself that's bad, stop doing that. And on an unconscious level, you are continuously beating yourself up for these things that you have no control over. You have no control over what your soul wants to experience. And if what your soul wants to experience, say, for example, is to be a very sensual person, to be a sexual person, that's how you experience infinity. That's how you love. That's how you get love. If you feel guilty about that, you shove it down and you say, oh, I'm not that kind of a person. I'm not a superficial sexual person. You shove it down into your unconscious. Then you are, on an unconscious level, you're not aware of it, you are constantly beating yourself up. That self-directed rage, which the Christians would call sin, self-imposed negativity, creates an imbalance. And that self-directed hatred will manifest in your energy body, in your physical body somewhere, and it shows up as disease. So the way to heal the conflict is to be able to, if you're able to, become conscious of, oh my God, this is what I've been doing to myself, to forgive yourself, like the demon-possessed people have to do, forgive those that abuse them. You're the one abusing yourself, so you have to forgive yourself. And then you have to nurture and allow yourself to have that focus, that desire, that joy within you. When you are free of conflict, then you will be able to express that joy through your physical body in your external world, and there is no place for the energy to get lodged, which means you will be in a state of balance, which is what shamanism is all about. It's all about creating a state of balance. So my friend here wants to ask, well, isn't that just the same as the Christians? No, the Christians say that God hates you, God is punishing you, and it's coming from outside of you. I'm saying disease that is caused from self-shame and self-hatred and rage is happening inside of you, and you're the one that's doing it. Now, he doesn't like that because he doesn't want to take responsibility. And so he wants to then argue with me, I'm just being like the Christians, I am shaming people in their illness. I'm not. And then he pulls out a really, my friend, this is just a cheesy, cowardly tactic. And it's manipulative, and it's a straw man argument, and you know it. And he says, so my quadriplegic friend just doesn't want to get up out of his chair bad enough. I mean, come on. So you're saying that I'm saying that your quadriplegic friend is that way because he can't access his rage. And that's a totally different thing. I have no idea what caused him being a quadriplegic. I don't know if he was born that way. I don't know if it's a result of injury or disease. And that is a karmic thing, which is a whole other issue. And that's not a disease, and you know it. So that kind of stuff annoys me when people do that. I don't like being manipulated and put into corners. That's what he's doing here. In any case, I won't get into that. So those are some of my thoughts about self-healing. And so my suggestion to everybody is the same. If you're asking me, how do I achieve enlightenment? How do I manifest wealth? How do I achieve health? How do I become an immortal? How do I become a powerful shaman? The answer to all of those questions is the same. It is, you learn all of these spiritual techniques that I'm teaching for one purpose. And that purpose is, as the Huna shaman guy says, is to reorganize the bad data, to change the bad data in your hard drive, in your unconscious mind, so that you will have no conflict. If you have conflict in your unconscious, you will project that conflict out into your world. no money, pollution, bad physical health, bad marriage. All of these things are your own unconscious projection. And the conflict you have with your external world is a conflict that's happening inside of you. That's why I say there's two ways to achieve enlightenment. One is to live in the forest by yourself and meditate, and the universe becomes your spouse and reflects back to you all of your illusion and your false attachments. And through your meditation and your energy work, you let go of that, and then you become enlightened. Or you live in the world. Maybe you have a relationship, maybe you have a family, but you live in the world and you pay taxes and you have a job and you do all those things. And you learn to, in this engagement with society, you learn to look at all of your fears and all of your anger and all of your self-directed shame, and you learn how to, this is what the Buddhists are trying to do, have compassion. And when you can see yourself in everybody, even in Hitler, then you will be able to have compassion on yourself, which means what? You will resolve your internal self-hatred, you will resolve your internal conflict, and you will achieve enlightenment. From the shamanic perspective, when you achieve true enlightenment, which means balance, there's no conflict inside of you, then the energies will be balanced. And when you have energetic balance, you will have physical, emotional, and spiritual health. Health is nothing more than balance. Balance is a continuous thing. The difference I have between people who are looking for a static enlightenment, where they reach and then they have no more problems and no more feelings and no more issues, which is just denial. Their life never stops with that. And I am full of all kinds of feelings, and I have sadness, and I have pain, and I have anger, and I have fear, and I have confusion, and I have self-doubt. I have all of these normal feelings. I am not enlightened where I don't have any issues. I have all kinds of feelings, but I practice the path of true shamanism, which is the path of balance. And I seek to embrace those things within me, to work through them. And by acknowledging and surfing that wave of life, I achieve a balance. That's what surfing is, by the way. You know, I like the toe-in surfing, but the toe-in surfing on those giant 100-foot waves, that's not real surfing. Because you're a toothpick on this giant wave, and the wave can't push you forward. You're too small. It just breaks on you. And you have to get towed in and outrun it. That's the best you can do. Real surfing is when the wave is pushing you forward, and you have this relationship with this wave as it's pushing you forward. You communicate back and forth with it, and ultimately, of course, the wave's going to decide what happens. But you have a relationship with what's happening with that wave. This is life. Life is a force that you ride, and you achieve a state of relationship and balance with. And when you're in that relationship and state of balance, you are in health and in happiness. It doesn't mean that you don't have issues. It just means that you're in a continuous fluctual state of balance. So those are some of my thoughts on self-healing. I've given you some links. I strongly recommend them. celestialqigong.com. matrix.thunderwizard.com, and also I recommend, of course, manifestation.thunderwizard.com. Or if you want to see all of my books and all of my videos and everything else, go to courses.thunderwizard.com. Okay? That's it for today. More coming soon. Talk to you later.